couldn't travel on a charter bus sitting side by side, camping in tents with 3 students per tent during a pandemic. So the junior high staff replaced our usual 2-week cross-country odyssey and created an Iliad, an 8-day deep dive into place at our land school. Since the theme of the Odyssey West highlights Native American history and culture, both past and present, it seemed appropriate to focus on those who have lived on this land, and on those who continue to have a deep connection to it. We wanted to go beyond simply acknowledging that this was Dakota and Ojibwe land, to seeing the land school with new eyes, to begin to understand how people might experience this place differently depending on their cultural background, their ethnicity, or the color of their skin. Creating community within our small junior high seemed especially important in this time of social distancing, but we also felt it was crucial to create relationships with our local Native community. In a time of such uncertainty, it seemed imperative to look at our local history and to explore present issues in order to understand what the future might hold for all of us.
This was a challenging experience, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, but it fed us on all levels. While we were exhausted, we felt rejuvenated. Even though we were physically isolated, students learning from home, and students camping in different pods around the land school, we ended up as a community. We had to be more aware as we instituted strict measures to mitigate the COVID risk. Shared challenges create strong bonds, test our character, and teach us we are more resilient than we thought.
Physically, we started out cold and wet. A cold snap killed many of our vegetables and crops and created a sheet of ice a 1/4 inch thick that slid off one of our tarps. But we were well prepared. We wore lots of layers and had extra land school quilts. To help facilitate social distancing, we created 4 separate camping pods scattered around the farmstead and lodge. We called the campsites Hillside Garden, Sleepy Hollow, Grape Arbor Hollow, and Spruce Tree House. We also ate very, very well. Alumni chef Adam Witherspoon and his friend Andrew McKinsis joined Jennifer Dodge to create a glorious feast, interspersed with delicious snacks. Much of our food came directly from the land school. A good hot meal does wonders in the cold and wet.
Emotionally, we were diving into challenging stuff. We were examining not just the early lives of Native peoples before the Europeans came, but also the clash of those cultures and the cruelty of white people towards the indigenous populations. What really stood out was the resilience and resistance of the Anishinaabe and the Dakota in the face of ongoing discrimination. To guide our academic experience and learn the stories of the land, we created 4 distinct study groups: the Dakota, the Ojibwe, the early settlers, and the last 100 years. We learned about the fur trade, how to track animals and what animals would have been here during the 19th century. We also learned about the logging industry and dairy farming. We learned about traditional farming machines and what the future holds for agriculture. Through our studies, we explored the intersection of science and history.
Introduce myself. My name is Bija Keens. I come from the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Anishinaabe in northern Wisconsin, and I'm of the Martin clan. I said I'm very thankful that you guys are all here and that I'm here as well to learn from one another. And I also said I'm very grateful for all the things that we've been given for living a good life.
Experts, both white and native, taught us about mammal tracking and the use of wild plants that grow at the land school. They showed us medical plants and allowed us to experience the power of a pulley system. They taught us how to put up a teepee, explaining the symbolism of the poles and the reason the door always faces east is to welcome the morning sun. We learned about treaties and mining companies and oil pipelines, how Native people have always been resisting colonization, and how they are still resisting.
An Anishinaabe elder, a woman who lived in a wigwam and wore buckskin until she was forced into a boarding school at age 12, told us her story and generously shared her wisdom. Anishinaabe experts showed us how to parch, dance, and whittle the manoomin, also known as wild rice. Local author and chef Beth Dooley created a decolonized feast for us featuring only foods that would have been found on our land before the European settlers came. After the feast, we ate the menumen we had prepared the traditional native way.
Interspersed between study and visits from our experts, we worked on stewardship projects and enjoyed ways to express ourselves creatively and physically. We created cat scratching posts, carded and spun wool, started fire using flint and steel, played disc golf, and learned how sheepdogs herd sheep with Aurora, a 7-week-old border collie puppy, as a very unhelpful teaching assistant. We played Cube, a lawn game similar to bowling, and croquet, and made art from our nature. One of our favorite ways to express ourselves was during our free time.
Stewardship groups harvested vegetables, made salsa, and started a fence to protect the chickens from a determined fox. Some groups walked the land, mapped invasive species, cleared trails, and put up trail posts. And many students helped Doug bottle an astounding amount of honey from our hives. 326 pounds of sweet deliciousness. An all-time land school record.
While the majority of students were camping at the land school, a small group of adolescents spent the Iliad learning from home. These students connected daily through Zoom, and though they were not physically present, Lake Country found many ways for them to connect to the people and happenings at the Lake Country Land School.
While physical work around the farm, going on hikes, playing together, and being creative was fun and relaxing, and seeing our land in a new way, we found ourselves challenging old thoughts and assumptions. We learned what homesteading did to Native communities and asked ourselves, should we be calling this place the homestead? How do my actions, my wants, affect other people's needs? We made connections with amazing local Indigenous people who trusted us enough to share their knowledge with us. We made new friends and spent time with old friends. We came away with a new knowledge of the land we call our land school.